Hello. It is a lovely, bright, sunny day here in London, and I have a huge pile of new books to look through and discuss. Some of these publishers kindly sent me, and others I bought myself. And I know this is probably far more books than I'll actually be able to read, especially since we're in the midst of book prize season. But I always really enjoy looking through recent publications. Most of these have only just come out here in the UK in March, and figuring out what I want to read next when I have time to read. And I'd love to hear if you have read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of them now. Also to say, this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, and I'll talk more about them in a little bit. Now, the very first book I want to discuss is a debut novel. It's called A Room Above a Shop by Anthony Shapland, and this follows a man who's inherited his family's business, and he hires a younger man to work alongside him in the shop, but they also cohabit above the shop and find a love with one another. So it's about forming connections, romantic connections, when you think there wasn't any opportunity or chance for doing so. But it's also about this shifting political and social scene in Wales in the 1980s, and also with the backdrop of the AIDS crisis, which is going on. So it sounds like a really tender and meaningful first novel. The Naked Eye by Yoko Tawada, and this novel follows a Vietnamese woman who is in Germany where she is kidnapped, and she escapes and goes to Paris, where she meets a number of other people who live on the fringes of society. But she also starts watching the films of Catherine Deneuve and becomes really fascinated by this luminous figure. It sounds like such a curious and original story. I'm really excited that Faber Books have reprinted Samuel Beckett's classic trilogy of Molloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnamable. And I was a really big Samuel Beckett fan in my teenage years, in my early 20s, but I've not read him for a really long time. And so this trilogy Beckett wrote in the late 1940s, and he originally wrote it in French, and he mostly translated these into English himself. And the novels form monologues by these strange figures that are pondering lots of existential questions, and it kind of follows their voices. And there's some connections between the novels where some characters are mentioned between the books, but primarily they're following individuals that are kind of on the brink between life and death, and pondering the meaning of existence. And also, really interestingly, I think Samuel Beckett wrote his classic Waiting for Godot in between writing Malone Dies and The Unnamable. So these novels form a kind of bridge over that classic play. And these editions also come with introductions by really interesting figures like Colm Tóibín and Claire Louise Bennett and Emer McBride, so our modern classic Irish authors. A Calamity of Noble Houses by Amira Ghenim, and this novel is set in Tunisia in the 1930s and follows a young bride who is accused of having an illicit affair with an intellectual activist. And the story of this scandal is related through a series of monologues of the family and people surrounding this debate and this conflict. As I mentioned in the beginning, this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, who create excellent indoor reading lights. This is my high-definition light from Serious Readers that has been my trusted reading companion for a very long time and throughout all seasons, because if you live somewhere like I do that has very changeable weather, it might be very sunny one minute and then very cloudy and dark the next, and this can make for a very uneven reading experience. But Serious Readers uses daylight wavelength technology, which replicates the daylight spectrum as close as technically possible, and this means that the light is clear and natural and just a joy to read under. So if you're looking for an excellent new reading light, I'd really recommend Serious Readers. I'll put a link in the description below, and please do go and check them out. And if you decide to buy one, be sure to enter the offer code ERIC, just ERIC, and this will save you £150 on a high-definition light and give you free shipping within the UK. So let me know if you decide to get one. And now, back to the books. The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovits, and this novel follows a man who has a family, and while his children are still young, he discovers that his wife is having an affair. So he vows that once their youngest child leaves their home and goes to college, that he will leave his wife and he'll start his life over again. So this novel begins when he has taken that youngest child to college, and then it follows him on a road trip as he's exploring his past and trying to figure out where he wants to go in his future. Luminous by Silvia Park, and this novel is set in the near future when robots have been engineered to live alongside humans, but these robots are deemed second-class citizens, and this is set in a unified Korea, and it follows two siblings who've been estranged from each other for a long time, ever since the loss of their third sibling, but it shows how they reconnect with each other and discover the mystery of their lost sibling, and it probes questions about what it means to be human and technology and society, and this has fans by a number of authors, including Karen Joy Fowler and Raven Leilani and Charles Yu, who wrote the excellent book Interior Chinatown. And Charles Yu says, this is full of complex characters, damaged and broken and beautiful. It's a novel full of pleasures, big and small, gorgeous sentences from which Park weaves a rich, layered story of family and work, of history and speculation of Korea, past, present, and future. I Hear You by Paul McVeigh, and this is a collection of short stories by the author of the novel The Good Son, which was a really excellent book. And so these stories include a number of different subjects. There's one story that's set in a poor area of Belfast and shows the impact of that the Troubles have upon the children who live there. And there's another story about a man who goes to visit his mother in a nursing home, and another story about a gay man who's writing a letter to the son that he never had. Sad Tiger by Neige Sinno, and this is a French novel that won a number of awards in France, and it deals with really difficult subject matter of following a girl who is sexually abused by her stepfather since adolescence, but when she grows older, she holds him to account, and her stepfather is prosecuted for his crimes, but it explores the complexity of abuse and surviving this abuse by looking at the work of a number of authors like Virginia Woolf and Toni Morrison. So it sounds like a really powerful literary work. Then I have a poetry collection called That Broke into Shining Crystals by Richard Scott, and this also deals with surviving assault and buried silences, but also it's about self-determination and radical queerness. And Richard Scott's previous poetry collection, Soho, I loved so much. His writing is so powerful and beautiful, and I can't wait to read this new collection. And even though I really question the color of the type that they've used here, because this light green on this purple background is really difficult to read. Now, from a purple-colored poetry collection to the new novel The Violet Hour by James Cahill, and this novel follows an artist named Thomas who's become very famous and very successful, but it explores the price that he paid to get here, of the people he had to step over to achieve this fame, and it's about who's allowed into this rarefied world of the art scene and who is kept out of it. There's a new edition of Granta magazine, and the theme of this one is winners, and this includes new fiction, nonfiction, and photography, including stories by two authors that have written some of my favorite books of recent years, of Mircea Cartarescu, or is it Mircea Cartarescu, who wrote Solenoid, and also Kay Patrick, who wrote the brilliant novel Mrs. S. So I'm really looking forward to reading new short stories by them, but also I'm exploring some stories by other authors and maybe discovering some new writers that I want to explore more of their work. There's a new novel by author Emma Donoghue called The Paris Express, which is set at the turn of the 20th century and follows a number of characters who are on an express train that is hurtling towards Paris. So there's an anarchist, there's an artist, there's a wealthy statesman, there's a medical student, and Emma Donoghue is such a prolific author, but I've read a number of her books, and they're all of really high quality. Next, I have quite a unique book called Mary Shelley in Bath. So the author, Mary Shelley, lived in the city of Bath for a year, but she had a lot of creative output during that time and did a lot of work while she was there. So this explores her year there through journals and letters, but also a bibliography of books that she read while she was there. And it includes some short stories that she produced while she was living in this city. And I've still only ever read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, so I'm really excited to explore some of her stories. I also love the inside cover of this, and I've visited Bath once before, and I've always wanted to go back because it is such a beautiful city. Madame Sosostris and the Festival for the Broken-Hearted by Ben Okri, and this novel takes place in the south of France at an unconventional party, an assembly of people who are having a masquerade party, but they also invite to their party a medium, and this medium tells them things which completely disrupts their romantic lives and their lives in general. It's meant to be a kind of play on A Midsummer Night's Dream. Ben Okri has also edited together a collection of African stories that have been put out by Everyman's Library, and their editions are always so beautiful. And this includes many different prize-winning authors from across the continent of Africa to show the diversity and richness of the storytelling tradition. Rock, Paper, Grenade by Artem Chekh, and this is a new Ukrainian novel about a boy whose family life is disrupted when his grandmother finds a new boyfriend who is suffering from PTSD and who is haunted by memories of the Soviet-Afghan war, and how the changes that take place in his family life, but also about the changing Ukrainian society around him. Next, I have a couple of really intriguing sounding memoirs. So first there is The Place of Tides by James Rebanks, and this follows the author as he travels to a remote place in Norway where he meets an old woman who still gathers down feathers from eider ducks. And this is a really grand tradition in Norwegian history and industry of gathering the down for pillows and for comforters. And I learned about this when I traveled to Norway recently. And it's about his connection with this mysterious woman who continues to labor at this profession and industry that is dying. Then there is is Children of Radium by Joe Dunthorne, and this memoir follows the author's experiences trying to piece together the life of his grandfather, who is a Jewish refugee from the Nazis, but who also invented radioactive toothpaste, and I'm not really sure how that works or why that would be a good invention to have, but there's this big mystery surrounding his grandfather's life, and his grandfather produced this massive memoir that none of his family has been able to read because it is so dryly written, but it's about how he discovers through this some curious facts about his grandfather's life. So this is the author and creator of the film Submarine, which is a really great film, and it sounds like such a curious family story. Blob by Maggie Su. This novel is about a young woman who is going through a lot of personal, financial, and work trouble in her life, but one night outside of a club, she finds this sentient blob that she takes home with her and feeds and then shapes into her perfect boyfriend, and it's about the joy and troubles that come alongside this. So this sounds like a really funny novel and a creative take on modern life. Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino, and this novel follows a woman who, since her birth, she's been convinced that she is actually an alien who has been sent to Earth to observe humankind. So it follows her observations, but also the question of whether she might be able to connect with people who are also like her. And this author has a really creative and unique take on life. I read her previous novel Parakeet, which I just found so vibrant and fascinating. So I've been really wanting to read this new novel by her, which is now out in paperback, which is why I got a copy of it. Who Wants to Live Forever by Hannah Thomas Oos. And this novel follows a couple who are deeply in love. They decide they want to spend the rest of their lives together until there's the discovery of eternal life. And one of the couple decides to exchange their relationship to live forever. So it's about the compromises and challenges of this and following this tumultuous relationship. This is said to be for fans of the novel Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I feel like almost every new book coming out is said like, oh, this is for fans of that novel. Home Seeking by Carissa Chen, and this novel follows a couple who in their youth in Shanghai, they form a connection with each other and love for one another, but the boy enlists in the army and they're separated, but then they reunite in their old age in America, and follows how they're looking back on their lives that they might have spent together. I Want to Go Home, But I'm Already There by Roisin Lanigan, and this novel follows a couple that move into a new rented apartment that seems really idyllic at first, but then there are a multitude of problems that surround it that they're helpless to control or enact any positive change because they're only renters. So it's about this crisis of a generation that can't afford to buy their own homes and are forced to rent throughout their adult lives. This Love by Lot Jeffs, and this novel follows two individuals who meet at university and who are quite different from each other, but because of their individual personalities, they're able to balance one another out. It follows them throughout their lives as they are able to both support and help one another. And this is being called the novel One Day for a New Generation. And finally, there is a new 20th edition of Kate Moss's novel Labyrinth. And of course, this is Kate Moss, the author and the founder of of the Women's Prize rather than the model. And this novel takes place over two timelines. First in the 1200s in France, and a young woman who thinks she's discovered a code to uncover the true Grail. But then the other side of the story takes place in modern times, or what were modern times 20 years ago, in the year 2005, and a woman who uncovers secrets to this past, and it's about this mysterious interplay between the past and the present. And I've never read any of Kate Moss's fiction, but I've always wanted to, obviously as a big fan of the Women's Prize, and been really curious about this. So I think this new edition will be a good motivation for that. And this comes with an introduction by Ian Rankin. So those are all the new books I want to talk about. Like I said, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books, and if you have any thoughts about any of them, or if you're interested in reading any of them now, or if you want to let me know about any new books that you have got recently that you're really looking forward to reading. But I'm going to go now and finish some work, and then get to reading some of these books and some more prize-nominated books. But I hope you have a lovely day, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.